Before you agree to schedule that C-section, you may want to watch this video, especially if your goal is to have a VBAC or to avoid a C-section unless absolutely medically necessary. You see, a lot of the times there is this idea, especially if you're trying for a VBAC, that if you don't go into labor by a certain point, you have to schedule a C-section just to keep it on the books. Or maybe it's another complication, or maybe it's just advanced maternal age, and your care provider is telling you, well, let's just schedule a C-section just in case, so we have it on the books, because it's better than you going into labor and us needing to do an emergency C-section. This is a cesarean trap, and it's actually cesarean trap number 6 on our list of the 21 cesarean traps that you want to avoid. If you're not familiar, then let me just tell you that this is basically a series that I'm going to go through each one of these cesarean traps at a deeper level. If you're brand new to me, make sure you check out the first video in this series. Go into the playlist on my YouTube channel and check out the Cesarean Traps playlist. This will give you the overview of basically what I'm teaching you, which is the cesarean traps and how you want to avoid those traps if you want to have a natural birth. You see, a lot of times moms think that they have to schedule the C-section to get it on the books because otherwise it's going to be hard to get one. And that can't be further from the truth. So inside of this masterclass, I'm going to teach you the truth about the cesarean trap and why you don't want to schedule a C-section just in case, and how that can actually undermine your confidence and lead to the C-section that you were trying to avoid, or otherwise make it more likely that you're going to feel a lot of stress at the end of your pregnancy and that you are more likely to agree to interventions that could otherwise have been avoided. So before we get into that, though, I just want to let you know that if you are brand new to me, definitely go and check out that first video that I mentioned in the Cesarean Trap series. And you're also going to want to know about how to go deeper with this. These are basically deep dive master classes. Now, the way that this works is that I'm going to tell you the exact cesarean trap. I'm going to share some stories with you from both sides of the dichotomy. And I'm also going to share with you the empowered birth method, which is my signature method of how I help all of my clients avoid a C-section that they don't actually need. I typically have worked with VBAC moms, particularly VBAC moms that have had multiple cesareans, to help them avoid that C-section that is being pushed just in case. So they often have this idea in their head from their care providers that they have to go into labor before their C-section date. And through what I teach within the empowered birth method and what I'm going to teach you today in this video, they later find out that actually they have a lot more power than they originally thought. They often will push this cesarean off, or they will say outright to their care provider, I'm not having a C-section unless absolutely medically necessary, and I call the shots. So the empowered birth method is not really about natural birth or bust. However, a lot of these videos are geared to moms who want to have that physiological birth experience called the true natural birth. So if you are in that group and you're looking to have a natural birth as natural as possible, then understanding the cesarean traps is going to help you immensely. Even if you're planning to have more medical intervention in your birth for whatever reasons, or you don't feel confident yet having a completely physiological birth, understanding the material inside of this series is also going to help you avoid the unnecessary C-section, because there are costs to having a C-section. Often moms don't know what those costs are until they're on the other side. And then it is much harder for them to achieve a VBAC. And even harder if they've had multiple C-sections before they realized that all of those C-sections could have been avoided if only they knew how to avoid those traps. So what I'm going to be doing inside of this masterclass is I'm going to be sharing with you about the cesarean trap on basically scheduling a C-section and what this does to your birth confidence, what this does to your birth plan, and how this can actually be a self-fulfilling prophecy that leads to another unnecessary C-section or even the first one. I'm also going to be sharing additional resources that you're going to want to check out, both book form and also websites and other resources that I've collected over the years. And I'm also going to tell you about how to apply this through the empowered birth method and the 3 paths to empowered birth. So look at these masterclasses not as just free birth education, but also something that you would plunk down $97 to learn from me directly if I was running a class on it. I want you to take notes, and I want you to take this education very seriously. I also believe in the rule of 3, particularly if you're going to do the do-it-yourself path. The do-it-yourself path is completely free. All you have to do is watch the content, maybe subscribe to our newsletter, get some of our additional resources that are also free off of my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com. And then you basically piece it together yourself, and you can create your own mini courses out of that. I do also have a signature introductory program called Your Empowered Birth Workshop that is also completely free. You just put your name and email in, and then that course is delivered to your inbox. Now, in addition to that, if you want to pay for support, that is when you can upgrade. And the upgrade is actually less than the cost of the price of groceries. So the idea here with Empowering Moms is that information is freely accessible, and I only charge for access to me and my coaching queens. The reason for that is because if you are still afraid, and if you do not have all of the information available to you, or it's only given to you from one lens, and that lens happens to be someone who has the interest of just making money off of you, or just making you follow the status quo, or because of their own fears, then what that does is it doesn't give you a full informed choice. If you're going to schedule a repeat C-section, you need to be able to have informed choice. You need to know what you're giving up. And no, it doesn't have to be traumatic natural birth or a C-section. You can actually have a beautiful and empowering natural birth experience. And here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about giving you that education. So now that you kind of know the overview of how we're going to be doing this, now we're going to get into the trap itself. And as I said, trap number 6 on our list is scheduling the C-section just in case. Now, this can come up if you happen to be carrying a breech baby and they say, well, your baby is breech, let's schedule a C-section. Go and watch my other video where I talked about breech birth to learn more about your options when it comes to breech birth, because no, you don't actually have to schedule a C-section just because your baby is breech. The other one, of course, is that if you have twins, they may also say, well, we're going to schedule your C-section. And again, if you are having twins, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a C-section. The most common reason why they will schedule a C-section is if you have already had a previous C-section or more than one. And again, this is why it can be really hard for moms who want to have a VBAC, because of the fact that there's more care providers that will just look at you and say, well, you had a C-section, so let's schedule your C-section for 39 weeks. And there's no discussion on it. And this can be a real big problem. There are other things that they may suggest that they schedule a C-section just in case. And some of them are complications, while others are not. So you really need to be able to be discerning about the kind of information that you're getting. Just because someone is telling you that they're going to schedule your C-section or that it's going to be easier doesn't necessarily mean that that is the only option. Now, this is where there gets to be a little bit of a trickiness to it, because we have grown up in a culture where we have been told that we need to do what is best for our baby and that a healthy baby is all that matters. There have also been a lot of moms who have had C-sections, more than one C-section at that. And they also have had traumatic natural births, or they were induced, or they were told that natural birth was going to be more painful, or they have only heard stories about natural births that were traumatic and painful and went wrong or tearing, and they think that the C-section is preferable to natural birth. This is not the kind of education that you need, especially if you are wanting to have a natural birth, especially if you are trying to have a VBAC. Unfortunately, this seems to be the dominating voice in our birth culture, and there are reasons for that. If you want to know more about that, you can always check out my Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. I also talk about this inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth, in the natural birth traps and in Why Birth Goes Wrong, which is chapters 1 and 2 of the book. Now, the thing that I tell all of my VBAC moms is that just because they had a traumatic birth experience with their first baby doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be the case with their next one. And labor can be a beautiful, gentle process. It doesn't have to be pain and trauma. And a lot of times what happens is you're told, well, if you schedule a C-section, you avoid labor. That can be appealing if you have already had trauma in your previous births. But if you also recognize about physiological birth and you understand the natural birth traps, then that's when you start to see, wait a minute, I could have had a better experience, and instead I'm scheduling major abdominal surgery to avoid something that I don't actually know is going to happen. So, what you really need to understand about this natural birth trap is that it is so prevalent because we have the idea that birth is painful. We have these fear traps on one side. We have the idea that a healthy baby is all that matters. And we have a lot of moms who have internalized their birth experiences and think that that C-section was needed. What I aim to do within the Cesarean Trap series is show moms that actually maybe it's not the full story. Maybe they could have birthed naturally if they had been supported properly. And maybe, just maybe, there is another side that mainstream isn't showing. You know, there are a lot of women out there, and a lot of my clients in particular, who come to me and they say, I would love to avoid a C-section at all costs. And they've scheduled my C-section for 39 weeks. How do I get into labor before that? I'm just going to tell you right now, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't. That's not how it works. If you want to have a physiological birth, which is going to allow your body to unfold the way it needs to for your baby to be born physiologically and have less pain, less intervention, no intervention at that, and be able to have very little to no possibilities of complications, then you need to have a physiological birth, which I also call the true natural birth. The reason I call it the true natural birth is because we have also appropriated the term natural birth within the medical system and our birth culture to mean anything from vaginal birth with an epidural all the way to unmedicated birth, often even with induction, often even with vaginal exams, and a lot of pain and trauma. And people will say, I had a natural birth and it was painful and traumatic, but they don't see what was actually going on is that they were either not feeling safe to birth or their birth was being sabotaged. Go and check out my other series, which is season 2 of the Empowered Birth series, The Natural Birth Traps. I also covered this in a couple of videos inside of the Essential Tips series for natural birth, which is season 1 of the Empowered Birth series. So I would highly suggest you go and check those videos out if you are not familiar. The other thing you need to understand is that our medical system has also been immersed in this environment where they see births going wrong. Not every single care provider is a category 5. Go and check out one of my other videos where I talk about how the care provider can be a natural birth trap in themselves. This is inside of both the Essential Tips series and inside of the natural birth traps. So understanding that not every single care provider wants to give you a C-section, and at the same time, they have fears that they have not worked through, and they also only see one side of the dichotomy, which is the medical birth side of things, then that skews their data. All they see is pathology. They don't see physiological birth. So if they don't see physiological birth, they are heavily managing these VBACs. They're heavily managing these breech births, and they are heavily managing these twin births. They are constantly seeing pathology. So of course, they're going to see a lot more things going wrong. On the other side of the dichotomy, we have the natural birth community, and they are not immune to criticism here, because there is a problem when you have been so traumatized by the medical system that you are afraid to go in when you truly need help. And when you truly need help, you need to be able to feel safe to get that help. And part of what I do with the empowered birth method and the empowered birth movement is I want to bring balance to both. Aim for a true natural birth and pull back only as much as needed. So when you understand about this dichotomy that's really going on, what you're also going to see is there's going to be moms that say, you know, I would never go to the hospital for a VBAC. I would never go to the hospital for a breech birth. I would never go to the hospital for a twin birth. And I myself am kind of in that category where if there's nothing wrong, I am not going to automatically defer to the medical system for a breech or a twin birth. I have spoken on that. And if you want to check out my stance on that and why, then you can go and check out those videos. But I've never had a C-section. I don't need to have a C-section to know that that's major abdominal surgery. I don't need to have a C-section to know that I don't want one. I have served enough clients that have told me the recovery period for having a C-section and how they don't want to go through it again. And because of the fact that I have sat with these women and had them crying to me, I also know how devastating it is when the care provider automatically schedules a C-section and they are trying to beat the clock. Go check out one of my videos on induction and another video on due dates to understand why baby needs to be ready and why you cannot rush birth and why it's not right for the medical system to automatically schedule a C-section just in case. Because what this does, first of all, to your confidence is it undermines it. It automatically puts the idea in your head that you may not go into labor on your own. First of all, you will go into labor on your own. It just might not be on the medical system's timeline. One of my clients, Dee Dee, and her name has been changed to protect her legally since she's also going to be filing complaints with the medical system in the future. She had basically said, I'm not having another C-section, but she'd already had 3 previous C-sections. So her OB and the medical system, they basically had scheduled her C-section for 39 weeks. When Dee Dee found me inside of my YouTube channel and decided to work with me directly at a deeper level as a coaching client and have me as her virtual doula, she had also basically got the idea because I told her what was going on. I said, look, the reason they're scheduling you for 39 weeks is because they don't want you to go into labor. And she's like, yeah, they told me that. They said that if I have one contraction, I could rupture. I said, that is a possibility, but it's a small possibility. I mean, we never know what's going to happen. And at the same time, do you feel that that's true for you? And she said, no, I don't feel that's true for me. I'm actually quite frustrated. I'm like, okay, so here's some information. And I brought up some information from Jen Camel's website, vbacfacts.com, on multiple cesareans. And I showed her what the numbers were. At this point, Dee Dee then informed me that because of the fact that this information was not based in her own home country, the medical system was dismissing it and saying VBAC after multiple cesareans isn't possible, even though the evidence existed. This then created another question for me. And I'm like, okay, so they aren't even going to base this on evidence. There's obviously some fear here. Now, I couldn't tell outright whether they were category 5 or if they were just scared. It turns out in the end that Dee Dee actually did get some support in the medical system once she was able to advocate for herself strongly, and once she was no longer willing to allow anybody else to put any fear onto her. You see, the medical system is not inherently bad and evil. And this is where a lot of the natural birth community can get this wrong, is that they automatically villainize the medical system. We can't do that. At the same time, we do need to hold them accountable for the damage that they have done. And a lot of the time, it's because of fear. If you want to understand this deeper, then I would suggest checking out some of my other videos on care providers and fear. And maybe also go and get the birth advocacy report from the Empowered Birth Toolkit. You go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit, and that will get you access to the Google Drive that has all of the resources for the do-it-yourself path. This is the deepest level where you also get access to the deep dive newsletter, where I share every single week on empowered mom magic and empowered birth wisdom. So understanding that the medical system isn't bad and wrong. There are people inside of the medical system, though, that they just want to push you into a C-section. And this is where you need to be careful. This is where you need to be discerning. This is where the trap happens, because often they won't present themselves as trying to push you into something. They will present it as, well, you don't want something bad to happen to your baby, and they prey on your fear. As I'm going to be sharing, the empowered birth method will help you to release that fear, and it will also tell you more about how to apply the information that you're going to be collecting. So how you fall into the trap, first of all, is by deferring to experts. You fall into the trap by seeing the horror stories out online and not knowing who to trust. You fall into the trap because oftentimes it sounds reasonable. Yeah, you don't want to have an emergency C-section. You're trying for a VBAC or you're trying for a vaginal birth, but they're saying that something could come up that would lead to the C-section. So you think, oh, maybe I should schedule the C-section. But when they schedule it, they are deliberately scheduling it at a point where you are less likely to go into labor on your own. So how Dee Dee avoided this is she pushed her C-section date all the way to 42 weeks, because I gave her the information and told her that most moms give birth between 41 and 42 weeks. That's about 75% of the population gives birth by 41 weeks and 95% by 42 weeks. This is verified data. You can go and check it out inside of In Your Own Time by Dr. Sarah Wickham, or inside of Why Induction Matters by Rachel Reed, or by reading Labor Induction, Why, When, and How by Hensi Goer. So understanding that if you are scheduling a C-section for 39 weeks and trying to beat the clock, it is not going to go well for you. And go check out one of my other videos inside of the Natural Birth Trap series if you want to know why doing all of the things to try to get into labor doesn't actually help you get into labor, but instead causes you to block the very hormones that you want to get you into labor in the first place. So understanding this, that it undermines your confidence. You automatically think, I won't go into labor on my own, so I have to beat the clock before I get the C-section, or it's another repeat C-section. If you take that away, if you take away that C-section looming date, You're no longer beating the clock. You're on your own timeline. The other thing, of course, is the sabotage. If they are telling you that you have to beat the clock in order to get your VBAC or in order to get your vaginal birth, then what this does is you're now trying to push on the outside. As mentioned before, there are already master classes on why you don't want to do this. So go check those out deeper. But the baseline of it is that if you are trying to speed up the process, it is basically like trying to get a flower to bloom before it's ready. Sure, you might get that flower open, but you're going to damage the petals, and you will never know what that flower could have been if you had left it alone. Your baby and your body are on their own timeline, and the medical system keeps trying to force you onto their timeline. It doesn't help. So, when you're being sabotaged in your natural birth process, what this then leads to is that C-section that you didn't want. You think that you don't go into labor on your own, and this then reinforces the whole idea that bodies are broken and that C-sections are always necessary. And then what happens is that you're either going to internalize that and think that it's you, or you're going to recognize that it's the outside, but you won't know how to apply it. Well, that is why information is free and I only charge for access to me. But before we get started in that, I'm just going to give you one resource that you're going to want to check out. So this is the book that I give to every single one of my clients who comes to me. In fact, I believe that this needs to be required reading for anybody who is supporting a woman in her birth space or anybody who identifies as a birthing person. Because, you know, there are people that are intersex and they have a uterus and they can get pregnant. And there are people who are trans and they have a uterus and they can get pregnant. So I'm being inclusive here. At the same time, the brand is empowering moms. So typically, I am speaking for moms, people who identify as moms. At the same time, I understand that birth education needs to be accessible. And this book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, I feel needs to be required reading. The reason I say that is because it goes not only into physiological birth, but also the rights of protection and the medical model of things and how this interacts with physiological birth and causes the fear, causes the doubt, causes the problems in our birth experiences that then reinforces the overall birth culture. In fact, I draw on this book quite a lot in my teaching. So if you do want the deeper dive, I do highly suggest you check out that one book. If there's any book I would suggest for natural birth, this would be it. Beyond that, I would also suggest you check out anything within the holistic natural birth and unassisted and free birth. And the reason for that isn't necessarily because you're going to free birth, but because if somebody is trying to push you into a repeat scheduled C-section or just a scheduled C-section, that already tells you they don't know how to support physiological birth, or they have a vested interest in getting you to just agree to surgery. The less afraid you are and the more confident you are to birth naturally, the less that they can actually control you. And this is the secret that Dee Dee knew. This is the secret that a lot of my clients know, is that they are prepared to birth on their own if it comes down to it. They want to be able to call in medical support, and they know that they don't need it. Aim for a true natural birth, pull back only as much as needed. So that goes into the empowered birth method. How do we apply this? How do you avoid that repeat C-section or scheduled C-section just in case? Well, the way you do this is simple. First of all, you need to get past your fear. I would suggest checking out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. You go into the playlist on my YouTube channel and it's right there. I would also suggest that you go and check out my little mini guide that I have called How to Have an Empowered VBAC. Now, this little mini guide is available on my website. You just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide and go down to the VBAC section. That will give you the overview. Now, even if you are not currently planning on having a C-section, or you have not had a C-section in the past, what you're going to want to do is still understand this side of birth, because most of the time, the ones that do the most research are the VBAC moms. They are the ones that were already screwed over at the worst possible level. So they're the ones that undid all of the fear traps, and they are the ones that were digging deeper into the education because they were so determined not to have another C-section. A lot of the information that I gather comes from my VBAC moms. And if you have resources that you would like to share, then please put them inside of the comments of this video or email the team hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I do have a resource library and I love to collect more resources. If you happen to be a birth worker and you find value in this content, or you would like to collaborate further, again, email hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I'm happy to amplify voices, and I'm happy to also go out and share what I know on other channels. So recognizing, first of all, you need to get past your fear. And in order to get past your fear, that requires you to understand where these stories about C-sections and about scheduling C-sections and about VBAC and breech birth and twin birth, where they all come from. That is why I have the Cesarean Trap series. It's also why I have the natural birth traps and the essential tips. There will be even more series of videos in the future for the rest of my mini guides. And if you want to know some of the other mini guides that I have on my website, again, go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and you can start to check those out. So throughout the website, I've basically collected all of these different resources. I've created them. I've made them simple to go through. I also have self-study programs available, so you can check those out as well. And I'm starting to add to my blog. The blog is based off of the deep dive masterclasses, though. So you're pretty much golden if you just sit and binge watch on the masterclasses. So understanding first, getting past your fear. And there's a whole framework around that with Reset Your Mindset. The next thing you need to do is get that right education. You need to go out and seek those resources. If somebody is telling you that they're going to schedule your C-section just in case for breech or for twins, or because you have had a C-section before or multiple, you need to go out and you need to find those resources. I suggest wisdom from multiple perspectives. The reason for that is because if you're only going from one source, you're missing something. This is why I talked about those two dichotomies, the natural birth community and the medical birth. Because yes, there are things that can go wrong, and it's important to know your options. But if you only focus on what can go wrong, you're not looking at the full picture of what can go right. And the medical system only sees the births that happen in the hospital. They don't see home births. They don't see unassisted births. So because they don't see it, they are looking at it from a different lens. The only ones they see are the ones that went wrong. And because they only see the ones that went wrong, and because of their training, they are more likely to say, well, it's too dangerous to do that, without seeing the bigger picture. And see, a lot of the free birth moms have done more research because they are so determined not to go back to the hospital. You can end up going the extreme route, though, where you resist all medical intervention, and even when it is necessary, you resist it. And this is what I aim to correct when I'm with my clients. And in fact, with Dee Dee, there came a point in her labor where I asked her, I'm like, Dee Dee, what does your intuition tell you? And she's like, my intuition tells me I would like to get checked out at the hospital. And we made the plan, and she went in and she was able to stand her ground, and she had her VBAC after 3 previous C-sections. She was able to then advocate strongly for herself because she'd already done the initial work. She had already recognized she could birth this baby at home all by herself, and she really didn't want to. She wanted to have that additional support. This is why it's so important for us to have our choices and to come to them from a place of power instead of a place of fear, and to come from it as a point of education on both sides, not just one, and to really make a plan that aligns with our values. Finally, the last thing that you're going to want to do is hire the right people. And again, the resources that I've collected and what I've shared in previous masterclasses will help you to do that. You do not want to hire somebody who only wants to schedule you for a C-section. You also need to recognize that there are care providers that make money off C-sections. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. There are care providers that would rather you just do what they tell you. And if you don't, they're going to pull every single trick in the book. This is, again, why you need to be past your fear. Because the more that you are standing in your power, the less they can project their fears onto you. You cannot thrive with a category 5. So understanding that the medical system can and will project their fears onto you, either because of profit, convenience, and liability, or because they just haven't seen physiological birth and they don't trust it, then that leads to the final piece of the empowered birth method, putting it all together. And then ideally, you would want to have some additional support. You need to have people around you that are going to say, hey, I know that you just got back from that appointment with your care provider and they tried everything in the book to scare you, and I believe you can do it. Not the ones that tell you to just listen to your doctor. And this can be really tricky, and this is why my clients hire me, is because of the fact that they go into these appointments, they have to deal with these care providers, and then afterwards we debrief. They usually call me up on WhatsApp and we talk about it, or they text me and we talk about it. Or maybe it's that we are doing a session together and it's a couple of days before they have to go and see their care provider. We work through those fears. We sometimes practice some of the skills that they need to have for advocating for themselves. And then they go in and they do it. This is what I've done with my clients. This is why I also have my self-study program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, because this is very involved to be able to understand how to do this at the deepest level. And premium coaching, I don't work with everyone who comes to me. So now that you understand about how to apply the empowered birth method, I'm just going to let you know again about those 3 paths. And if you want to go deeper with those 3 paths, all you need to do is go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and check out those 3 paths. But number 1 is the do-it-yourself path, which you are technically on already. You watch the deep dive masterclasses every single week. You go and get our free resources that are on the website at empoweringmomsbirth.com. You follow up, maybe join the community newsletter, and you get more information that can help you. You can also ask questions inside of the comments, and we will get back to you when we can. If it's urgent, you can email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And if you like more structure and do it yourself is no longer working for you, you can upgrade to self-study. With self-study, that is where you can go through our mini challenges. We have a few of them already on the playlists. So you can check out the Write Your Empowered Birth Plan mini challenge. You can check out Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth. And then the first level, where you put your name and email in, gets you your Empowered Birth workshop. This is a completely free course. It's about 6 hours to go through. It has 6 modules. and it will help you to go through and get past your fear, understand physiological birth, understand how to confidently say no to interventions and recognizing when to induce or have a C-section, when not to. It will help you spot those red flags with your care provider, write your empowered birth plan, and also get your partner on board. This is the overview and signature system that I taught all of my clients before they even hired me as a coach. You can also go and check out my book, Your Empowered Birth, which is on Amazon. You can also go inside of the playlist on the YouTube channel and listen to the book. However, if you are the kind of person who is a visual learner, then having a copy of the book in your possession is probably the best bet for you because you'll be able to highlight it. You'll be able to flip through different pages and bookmark it. And you don't have to get the paperback if that's too much for you. I do understand about price points. I do understand about levels of investment. Wherever you're at in your empowered birth journey and with your budget and your time constraints, I want you to have an empowered birth. So the second path outside of just regular self-study is self-study VIP. This is the first level where you pay, and you have options within that as well. If you're looking to truly do it yourself, then the self-study VIP course, which I call Your Empowered Birth Academy, is probably going to be the best bet for you because it's all of the same coaching tools that I do in my deep level coaching with my clients. It's everything I taught Dee Dee. It's everything that I've taught my other clients who have had successful VBACs and avoided those scheduled C-sections that they didn't want. And essentially, they've been able to have their empowered births. The reason I do that is because I want to make sure that after you go through that program, you still have access to one laser coaching call with me or one of my team members. And inside of this session, we're making sure that you have everything you need. You've graduated from the program. You need to make sure that everything is solidified and that there's no surprises that could come up and be like, oh, actually, your care provider is a category 5 based on what you're telling me. And you may not have seen that. But now I'm letting you know that this is an added challenge and we need to make a plan around that. After that, you're free to go on your path. You're free to continue to binge watch the content. You're free to continue to stay with Empowered Birth Academy. And we also have additional courses that get added to Academy. So it's lifetime access. Because path number 3, premium coaching, I don't work with everyone who comes to me. I keep my containers for my classes very small and intimate. I also keep my laser coaching focused, and we give it to the ones who need it most, who are willing to invest in themselves, who are going to do the work. And not only that, but when I'm taking on a high-level client, I'm really looking for those case stories that are going to ripple out and help other moms. Dee Dee's story is one of them. Jenny's is another. Rebecca's is powerful. The reason why I like to be able to just curate who I take on as a client is so that I can have those big transformations with these moms. And because of that, that is why I wanted to make sure that everything would be accessible for you, whether you could work with me at the deepest level or not. So if you found value in this, please like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on. And now that you understand the 3 paths, let's quickly recap on what we learned about the cesarean traps themselves. So first of all, what you need to understand about the repeat scheduled C-section or the scheduled C-section just in case is that it undermines your confidence and it tells you that you may not go into labor on your own, which is a lie. You will go into labor on your own. It just may not be on the medical system's timeline. The second thing is that it can sabotage you because if you're trying to push yourself into labor by a certain point, that can then mess up your physiological process. Finally, if they're trying to schedule a repeat C-section, they don't trust birth. and they may be a category 5, and you may not see that. You may also be stuck in fear and think that you have no options. This is not okay. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. And I'm going to make sure that you have all of the resources at your fingertips. So make sure you read Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. Go check out VBAC Facts if you happen to be looking to have a VBAC, because VBACfacts.com with Jen Camel is the resource that I most often send my clients to. The other side of it that I would really like you to check out is that if you are having twins or if you happen to be having a breech baby, then you're also going to want to check out the other videos that I've done before this one, which is Cesarean Trap number 4, twins, and Cesarean Trap number 5, breech. There will be more Cesarean Traps in the future as well. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Now, as for the empowered birth method, you need to get past your fear. You need to have the right education from both sides of the dichotomy, and you need to have the right care provider and the right support. So at the end of the day, this is your choice. You don't need to be pushed into a C-section just in case. You will go into labor on your own. Babies flip even when they're breech. Sometimes they flip in labor. Twins can be born by surprise. Sometimes you schedule a C-section for twins, and those twins decide, no, we're going to be born vaginally, and they beat the clock. So when you recognize this, that scheduling the C-section just in case, when there's really no medical need, is setting you up to fail, then you also recognize what a big trap it is. And maybe you're a little angry about that. And I wouldn't blame you if you were, because it definitely ticks me off when I see these things. And I want you to know you're not alone. There are lots of moms who have been tricked. There are lots of moms that are still getting screwed over. And that is why it is so important that if you found value in this video, please like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms. I'm creating these videos essentially to make sure that moms don't get tricked, because I am really, really tired of it. I got into this work over 10 years ago because I could see what was happening in my community. And when I realized that it was on a bigger level, I knew I had to do something about it. I've written my book, Your Empowered Birth. I have Your Empowered Birth Academy, and I continue to put out these resources even as I'm coaching my clients. And even as I'm building my mistress minds and higher level classes. But again, I don't take on everyone who comes to me. So make sure you're treating these master classes as if you had paid at least $97 to be here, because I am going to show up for you every single week. I'm going to give you this information. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments and I will get back to you. If it's urgent, email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. So that's pretty much everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. And next week, we are going to be tackling Cesarean Trap number 7, which is the failure to progress. So stay tuned for that. So thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey, and I will see you soon. Namaste.